Alright guys, so I'm gonna create a new folder and let's call our project Next.js portfolio, for example. I'm gonna just open the project in VS Code, running the command code dot. Once we are in VS Code, I'm gonna just open a new terminal and I'm gonna switch to git bash terminal. So by the way, if you are using Windows, I highly recommend using the bash. It's more powerful than the classic Windows PowerShell. It gives you the ability to use the Linux commands in your Windows machine. So it's very awesome. We're gonna do yarn create. By the way, I'm using yarn. You can either use yarn or npm. There is no problem. So I'm gonna just yarn create next app like so, and I'm gonna specify that I want to create the project in this current directory. It will ask us now some questions like, would you like to use TypeScript? Yes. Same thing for ESLint. Also, we're gonna use TailwindCSS for the source directory. Since we are using Next.js 13 with the app directory, there is no need to use the source directory. So the app directory is playing the role of the old source directory, so there is no need to use it. We're gonna use the app router, of course, and we're gonna not customize the import alias. While the project is creating, let me just do some cleaning. So in the global CSS, I'm gonna remove all the styles that came by default. Hit save. Same thing for the layout. So layout looks fine to me. I'm gonna just change the title and leave the description as it is. Maybe we can change it later, it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna just put Next.js portfolio, something like that, tutorial. The font looks fine. I'm gonna leave it as it is. Let's move now to our page. I'm gonna remove all those stuff and create a new component. So export default function home, and let's try if our Tailwind CSS is working. So we're gonna just give it text 5XL with a background red 500, and let's start our server. So yarn dev. Alright, let's open the browser now and go to localhost 3000 and see if everything's working fine. As you can see, guys, everything is working just fine. Okay, so first thing in the layout, let's fix some things. For example, the children, I want to give it a global, like a container, but we're gonna customize it. We're gonna give it some padding and some overflow hidden and those stuff that we should give to all our projects. Basically, our project is only one page, so you can either do that in our page, but I prefer to organize things and do it in the layout. So for example, I'm gonna give it a width full, background, let's give it black background. Main height should be screen. I'm gonna give it padding Y2, but for larger screens it should be more, of course, so something like padding 10. After that, we should also specify the overflow X, which should be hidden in case if some component use a width more than the screen. So overflow X hidden will fix that. For the padding in the X, padding X will give it something like 6. Larger screens X12. Maybe you can also specify the XL, so the larger screen, something like the X20. Okay, looks fine. And one more thing is the text. Let's use this as our default color for our text. and default background for our whole page or our whole landing page will be a black. Alright, cool. So let's see if everything's working fine. As you can see, guys, we have the padding here, we have the background, and also in the mobile devices we have a smaller padding, so everything looks fine to me now. So let's move to our page now. Okay, so let me just create a div that should be wrappered, so maybe we call it a container, but for the moment just keep it as it is. Maybe we can use it after that. Just to organize things, I'm gonna use some comments. So we have 4 sections in our landing page. So the first section will be the navbar, the hero section. The section number 2 will be skills. After that we have the third section, which will contain our projects, and the last one is an about me section. So let's just create those 4 sections. So section 1, as we said, is navbar plus, let's call it header or hero or whatever you want to call it. Okay guys, so for the first section, it's the first section that visitors will see when they visit our landing page, so we want to give it that look that will keep all the height of the screen. So basically what we should do is specify that we should give it a min height screen. That's the first step. After that we're gonna give it some spacing between each element, so something like space y8, and for larger screens we're gonna increase that by double. Okay, so now we're gonna create the navbar. We're gonna also justify center and z15 and relative. We're gonna give it some styling, so class name, I'm gonna give it a text center. For the size, let's give it text to XL. A cursor pointer. A font, let's give it the most bold one, which is font black. Italic, why not? And our main color, let's say text green for 100 looks good. Alright, so as you can see, we have now our letter logo thing in the navbar. Okay, now let's create our links. So I'm gonna just use a basic UL list. Okay, so I just forgot to add this justify between. We should just add justify between to get this spacing between the logo and our links. So now I'm gonna just create the other links. So we have home, we have, actually we can do something cooler than that. We can just specify home in lowercase, and in Tailwind it will automatically change it to uppercase. So we have home, let's say work, and the last section or link is about. Okay, cool, that looks cool. We're gonna also add hover effect. We're gonna give it something the same color as the active one, which is text green 400. Same thing for this one, just to get this nice hover effect. And anytime I'm using hover, I like to use the transition all, just to give this nice look transition. Okay, now just to organize things, I prefer this navbar instead of just putting it in the page, the default page. Why not create a new folder, call it components, and create a new component, let's call it navbar. Again, I say that just to organize things. If you want, for example, our project is so small, it's just a small landing page, so we can, yes, we can just put our code, all the code in one page, but just to get things organized, we're gonna just split those, and let's call our navbar here, and everything should works fine. Okay, cool. Okay, and let's create the card component. Let's call it header or card, whatever you want. Okay, so our component is working fine. Now to do those little animations, we're gonna need a library. So this is a library where you can download free animations. So there is a lot of free animations and easy to integrate in your React application. They give you basically a JSON file that contains all the assets and the animation to work basically, and you just call their package from npm. Okay, let's use this one. This one looks good. So to use this animation here, just click on generate link. Make sure that you create an account on the website. It's free, by the way, as I said. Select your project. Alright, as you can see guys, now this JSON is generated. What we'll do is just copy this JSON file, go back to our VS Code and create another folder. So you can either create something like assets and put all your images, SVGs, animations in here. But since we are using a lot of animations, I'm gonna create a specific folder for that. And the first animation, we're gonna just call it geek or something like person.json and paste our data in here. Okay, now to use the library, we should install it first. So I'm gonna just do yarn add, and the library is Lottie React. We're gonna also use the React icons library. Okay, let's import our assets. So first thing, we're gonna need to import the library itself. It's Lottie from Lottie React. The second thing we're gonna import is our JSON file. Okay, so I guess those two things that we need, but there is an important thing that we should not forget. In order to use the Lottie package, we need to use client. This is very important. Okay, so let's create now our card. First thing, we're gonna give it a width fit, a margin X auto to center it in our screen, padding Y. For larger screens, we're gonna give it a padding 6, block. Larger screens, it should be flex. That's the difference. Okay, now so I'm gonna just use this component, Lottie component, which is expecting a loop, which is a boolean. It's not optional, so you should specify the animation data. We're gonna put the person animation that we are just create, and we're gonna give it some class name just to style it a bit, something like the width, this MX auto to justify its century, XL. For larger screens, we're gonna give it a width 56, and 2XL for the larger screens, and something like maybe 64. Okay, we are getting something nice. Well, let's continue now with the second part of our card. Let's give it a class name. Also, we shouldn't forget to add the width full and the height fit and a space Y10 to give a little spacing between the elements of our div, so the children of our div will have small spacing. Another span. Just put in your name in here. Well, let's continue now with our texts of the card. So we have created the first element, the first text. Now let's create the second one. Also guys, after that I just add a Lottie component and I search in the Lottie website for a computer animation. I wanna give it a width 6, so I wanna give it something like an emoji effect but animated. I also add this text, same thing for another H2. I'll just change a little bit the stylings and give it another animation, and same thing for the last one as well. So in summary we will have something like that. You will see also that I added a nice background, so a pattern. Basically, to get those beautiful pattern you can just go to, okay, so the website guys is Hero Patterns. You will find a lot of designs. Just choose the one that you like. For example, this one is just specify the background color, the foreground color, the opacity, and you will get those CSS codes. Just copy them into your globals.css. As you can see, I created a new div, a new class name, call it card, and just basically call our card with the class name card. Same thing I did for the background of all our projects, so I give it a background pattern, and same thing for the layout. We can just paste that in. I will hit refresh, and as you can see guys, in the background we have those beautiful patterns that keep repeating without using any image. So this is just SVGs, so which is very cool. Also I changed the opacity a little bit. To change that, just can go in your CSS and you will find fill opacity and just keep playing with those numbers. So the value should be something between 0 and 1. 0, which means the opacity will be hidden, so your pattern will be hidden. But if you specify 1, it should be at full opacity. After that guys, I just create the hero section. So I just create this div with the class name that has those properties, something like the padding, the size of the text, the centering elements, and the display flex. After that I added my text with some Lottie animations. So I searched the Lottie site for some new animations and add them in the animations folder using JSON. And here is the result. As you can see guys, the design looks perfect and clean with those animations too. That's cool. I also added this beautiful icon in the bottom, just to give it a little animation in the bottom, because we have an empty space here. I said maybe we put an icon with an animation which will I did, by the way, the animation just using Tailwind, so I didn't use any library or hard code it myself. So to use animations, that just put animate dash and you'll find a bunch of animations that you can use. So guys, that's the end of the section 1. We just finished our section which contains the navbar, the card, and the heroes section. We're gonna now move to section number 2. Okay guys, so for the second section, basically I created just a div, an empty div. I give it a space y8 just to give a little spacing, and for the larger screens a larger amount. After that I created another div which will contain just some styling, like the length of our text and also the font. I added in this div the text elements that we're gonna use, so I just add those text elements, and in the end I added a little animation icon, and the result of the first section will something like this. So it looks nice. After that I created another div element which will contain the images of the skill. So if each skill will be represented by an image in a grid, as you can see, a grid with columns 2, but in larger screens it's medium screens it's 3, but in larger screens it's 4, with a spacing of 14. So the image will look something like that. Basically I'm using the image from the next image, and the result will look something like that. I already add the hover effects with the scale and the transition all. After that I just copy and paste and just change the images, and by the way the images are hosted in my public folder under a folder directory named images. The result looks something like that. Alright guys, now let's move to the section 3, which will contain the projects. So basically I created another div which will contain our section, just like the other section. It has the same things. For example, the spacing, the larger screen spacing is 10. I just added a margin top for the larger screens, and for small screens a margin top of 20. You can either use that, or there is an alternative. So for the parent element you can use something like space y13, or specify any spacing you want, but it's fine, we're gonna just keep this as it is. After that I created another div which will contain like the title of our section, the same thing that we did with our previous title here in the skills, and I added the element of the title, this time without any animation, so I don't abuse the use of animations. After that I moved to the part where we should display our projects. So basically it's which should look something like this. It should be a grid, and I added some attributes to make this grid looks responsive in smaller devices. I created after that a call span 1, and I started by adding the elements of the project, like the buttons and some text, some paragraph, and the title of our project. The result will look something like this. I didn't add yet the image, so let me just add the image in the top. So I'm just using the next images with a source, a class name, a width and a height, and the final result is something like this. As you can see guys, design is very clean, and it represents with a good way the projects, with the image, with the title of the project, a small description, and a button. We can call it a call to action. Maybe you can put your GitHub here or anything related to this project. So after that I just cloned the same work, copy and paste it again to have the same projects. I just changed the images, but for the second project, as you can see, I just put it on the right instead of on the left. How did I do that? Basically I just replaced the position of the image. So instead of the image being the first one after the content, I placed the image in the last. So we have this beautiful design that is symmetric and at the same time looks nice. Alright guys, now let's move to the last section, which is the fourth one, about me section. Same thing as the other ones. Let me just close this. So same thing, we are giving a spacing between the elements. We're gonna create a title for the section and use those texts. After that, I'm gonna create the content of the section, so it will be a grid which will contain some texts basically, which the results looks something like that. After that, we should put some images so in the side, so in one side we'll have the text and the other side will have like a couple of images to display the hobbies and stuff. So what I did, I just add a div element, give it a width and a height, and specify the background, which should be an image, and the result will look something like that. So that's the final result. As you can see, the images have this little animation that plays in. It's like some chords. So to create this animation is pretty easy. Just open the tailwind.config.js file. Basically what you need to do is go to the theme property, in the extend property, and you should create something called the keyframes. So open just the keyframe, and now what you need to do is just choose a name, so whatever you want, plop, circle. As you can see, that's how I'm naming my animations, or at least my keyframes. So just name it, and you can just create your animation like basic CSS. Just put the percentage like 0%. It should have these properties. 100% should have these properties. After you create your keyframes, what you need to do is create another property called animation, give it a name, just specify what it should have, like the name of the animation, the delay and stuff. Alright guys, now let's give a look to our final project. So it will look something like this. That's the first section, the scales section with this hover effect, the works section which contains our projects, and the about me section with this beautiful animation. Alright guys, I hope you liked the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to support me, and if you have any ideas of next project that you want to see or build, just put it on the comment below. I will really appreciate it guys, and see you in the next one.